Hello and welcome to the Max MPS Radio. My name is Jan Fisser and it's actually been a while since I've done an English episode. Today I'm joined again by Dr. Mike Israetel, who is overseas, and I actually had the intent to summarize and make like a whole practical application podcast from the last two podcasts we actually did together. But I decided that's probably not the best time for that because in the end, in the current situation, there isn't really that much practical application for that type of theory and thoughts. So we will probably talk a little bit about how you can get the best out of the current times. And Mike, welcome again to the podcast.
Thanks for having me again.
How's life over there?
It's okay. Mostly stay at home anyway. So, it's in the Philadelphia, non-essential businesses are closed. So most gyms are closed and the grocery store's open. I don't really go anywhere else. So I'm doing okay.
When did you stop going to the gym?
I never stopped going to the gym.
Okay, will you eventually stop, if I can ask that?
No, because I'll rent out a private training studio if necessary and just go myself and my training partner. It's going to cost an obscene amount of money that I have been saving for a long time for emergencies.
So your plans, what are your plans for if eventually the gyms will be closed?
So they don't believe that the law allows folks to close non-commercial enterprises. So
gotcha.
it's just like somebody has a private personal training studio and then pay them lots of money, and it's just you. So
I think I was just misunderstanding you.
No worries.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I
have some friends with like strongman gyms and stuff, and it's their gym, like they literally own it, and it's not open to the public.
Yeah, makes sense. Like non-public gyms will be open. I mean, it's eventually just your space.
Totally, yeah. So until and unless they make us stay at our houses, that's the case. But in that case, we're already doing some at-home workouts for our PM sessions.
Really cool.
We'll just do a whole lot of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Germany is pretty close before the lockdown. Like a lot of like countries in Europe pretty much had the lockdown already. So it's probably only a matter of like days, maybe weeks. But yeah.
Huh. Okay.
I just quickly want a little disclaimer because I'm definitely no expert in this and I will not talk out of my scope. And I think I can say the same for you.
Sure.
So my first question for today is actually, what are your thoughts on the current situation? How does it affect your near future plans in competing in bodybuilding? Since I've heard a podcast with Louis Frillingdorf, which you did pretty recently. By the way, just shout outing my buddy, Louis, who did a fantastic job.
It was a great podcast. He was a great host.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about you will eventually compete in bodybuilding throughout the year, I think. And I just want to ask you about your current situation. Like, did something change, or did you plan to eventually shift or evaluate the situation in like months ahead or something like that?
Well, so I'm not lean yet, and I don't make contest plans until I'm lean, but I'm well on my way. So I'm still dieting and still training, and the plan will continue to be the plan unless when we get closer, Charlie and I are going to be probably competing together, and when we get closer to being stage ready, which could happen in 12 weeks, 14, 16 weeks or something, then we may choose to compete if there are venues for competition open by then. So, and if not, we'll just get really lean, back off a little bit, and then probably compete in the fall. So.
Yeah, I was eventually talking about the fall season anyways. I mean, obviously there's a gap between the EU and the US, but like right now, like the spring season is pretty much canceled in like whole Europe. And it really sucks for the people being 6 weeks out and now have their shows canceled. But I mean, it's probably necessary, or it's necessary. And yeah, I mean, it's the spring, the fall season's kind of on the fence. And I have like currently 7 clients who I actually intended to prepare for fall. We all had a discussion, and I pretty much all explained like how dieting and like being really really lean will affect your overall like health and immune system,
Sure. Hmm.
and make sure that they actually understand that. And yeah, we then kind of made the decision together, or I kind of lay out the facts and tell them that maybe in fall the competition will not happen, and we all made or they all made their decision that we will continue and then evaluate in like 3 months like the whole situation again. And it's
Sure.
probably more foreseeable if there are actually even competitions in the fall. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
I've seen some decent forecasts for the U.S. thing being like an altered lifestyle in some capacity for 3 to 4 months from a week ago. So, March, April, May, part of June, maybe all of June. But by July, August, things may be returning considerably more back to normal. So maybe there will be some fall competing.
Let's hope so, man. I really, really wish that this will happen.
Sure, sure.
So you pretty much continue everything, and then just evaluate like throughout next few weeks and months as well.
Yeah, yeah. Though that might not be the recommendation for everyone, especially folks that can't get to a gym. That might be a bit of a different circumstance.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we will talk about that really, really soon. So, pretty much like training in a time frame. I mean, obviously, context is super important. Like a few people may have like great equipment at home, and they can pretty much just continue everything. I had a lot of programming to do this week, and it was pretty much ranged from just changing out a few exercises and pretty much having everything else the same, to doing a whole mesocycle of pretty much just having bands and maybe body weight and maybe some small dumbbells. So everything we will talk about is probably pretty context dependent. But for right now, for the first question that I have for you is like in terms of equipment, because like currently a lot of people in Germany or and generally in Europe are probably restricted to train at home. Like what would be in terms of equipment, what would be your priority when you are looking into buying equipment for your own little home session, home workouts?
I think one of the best things you can buy is one of those power blocks, which has the adjustable dumbbells from small weight all the way up to large weight. So it's one set of dumbbells, and you can clip in the clip, and it takes out a big chunk or takes out a small chunk, and then you can have dumbbells ranging from 2.5 kilos all the way up to 25 kilos. Those are great. They're probably going to cost you something like 250 euros. So it's pretty expensive. And then next best option, I would say, is a pair of dumbbells, just one pair, that are, something you can do lateral raises with for sets of 5 to 10, while at the same time doing bent over rows for sets of 20 to 30. It's probably going to be about the same dumbbell for most people. And if you just get 2 dumbbells of that loading, whatever that is for you, then you're going to be in the possession of enough equipment just with those dumbbells and the floor to be able to provide a very, very robust hypertrophy stimulus. So I think that the bands have very limited application. Unfortunately, bands are usually a giant waste of time, especially if you don't have somewhere to put them. Like you can't attach them to a whole lot of anything. And so, after, bands are also really cheap, so you can buy bands even if you just want them for a few exercises. But again, the resistance curve on bands is usually backwards for what you want on most exercises. So with dumbbells, you're off to a real good start. The next economic thing is the the selectorized power block dumbbells. After that, I think a small rack with about 120, 130 kilos of weight at home gets you pretty far. That gets you real far because
Yeah.
then with a rack and a bar, you can do modified pull-ups, inverted rows, almost every barbell movement, and then
Mm.
really you can't even contest prep like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And arguably, you can continue contest prep or at least general hypertrophy training for bodybuilding with just a pair of dumbbells.
Yeah, I mean, like literally every client that is currently continuously prepping with me has at least a barbell and enough weight. Like a rack would be really, really good, but I mean with a barbell and enough weight, like a pull-up bar and like a small set of dumbbells, like even adjustable dumbbells, you can do a lot. Like you can literally train everything. I mean, if you're really, really low on budget, probably a pair of bands is better than just having body weight. But
Yeah,
as you said, the resistance curve is actually you have more resistance. The You have more resistance when you're actually getting weaker in terms of
yeah,
the strength curve of the muscle. So
yeah.
I mean, I did my first home workout 2 days ago, and I literally have immense quad, back, and chest stomps. It's like
Sure.
crazy what you can do with a backpack and like just bottles of water and a band and like split
Yeah,
squats with a heel elevated shoe. I
yeah,
was dying, like literally.
yeah.
Like,
So at RP, we just designed and are going to release male at-home training templates, which we've been working on for some time, but we rushed them this week to try to get them out next week.
makes sense.
And we have a female version already. And I tell you what, man, I made all those workouts myself. They are so brutal. I wish the gym was open just to keep people from being in that much physical agony. Training hard enough to provide a robust enough stimulus at home with just some dumbbells
Yeah,
is really, you just have to know a little bit about what you're doing, and we can give some tips here as to how to design such programs. But it's really training hard is not the problem.
yeah, absolutely. And we will dive into training parameters pretty much right now. So, I would like to ask if you can dive into the stimulus to fatigue ratio in different training modalities and equipment a little bit more, and tell us about maybe different implication if you have like really, really limited equipment to rather more equipment or like basic equipment that we just touched about or talked about.
Yeah. So I think that if you're dealing with very little equipment, the biggest problem you're facing from a theoretical perspective is raw stimulus magnitude. This is difficult to provide stimulus, and you're not so concerned yet about fatigue because, for example, let's say you have no dumbbells and you have to train legs. How the hell are you going to train legs? And how the hell are you going to train your back? And how are you going to train your arms? So the big problem with limited equipment is a small ability to stimulate at all. Once you have some equipment, it's still usually capped by raw stimulus magnitude. So, for example, when you have two dumbbells each weighing 15 kilos, you typically bent over row 75 kilos for reps. Gee, you got a sum total of 30. Fatigue's not your first concern, right?
Yeah.
So the stimulus to fatigue ratio part, the stimulus is really the problem. So probably the more pertinent questions to be asking is how do we maximize the stimulus? And then maybe later we can dig into, okay, will that be too much fatigue? The good news is most at-home training has actually a very good stimulus to fatigue ratio, but it's just the raw stimulus magnitude is just not great enough. So we have to find ways of multiplying the stimulus from at-home training. I think that's the big challenge.
So, yeah, I mean, as we said, like context is like super important. So if you just have bands, probably you have to maximize every little bit of stimulus you can.
Yeah, I
But
would say buy dumbbells. Buy
yeah,
dumbbells.
yeah, I mean,
If you cannot afford dumbbells of one weight to be shipped to your home, two dumbbells, each 10 or 15 kilos, if you can't afford that, you probably shouldn't be exercising recreationally in any way that requires anything but push-ups, sit-ups, bodyweight squats, lunges, and running around the block, all of which you can do with no equipment anyway. If you'd like to be into hypertrophy training and really make a mark in your organizing your eating and so on and so forth, you should save up a little bit of money and buy some dumbbells. I'm actually not wholly, I don't want to say wholly interested, it's a bit of a rude way to say it. I have a little disregard for conversations about at-home training with no equipment at all. In the modern world, in Europe and the United States, we have about 10 unbelievably efficient package delivery services competing for our dollar, our euro, and we have who knows how many warehouses full of dumbbells, full of barbells that you can just order online and they show up in a week. So take a deload week and then get your dumbbells, and then you can start making sense of some training. And it's funny because I think James and I have answered a similar question before, a similar line of reasoning on RP Plus, where someone's like, hey, I really want to take a crack at bodybuilding, hypertrophy training, but I just have a home gym with like one barbell. What do I do? And James and I are like, join a gym. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, you don't really want to take a crack at bodybuilding if you're not willing to leave your home. Now we don't have a choice, right? But you can at the very least order dumbbells or a barbell set or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Like as you said, obviously right now we don't really have the choice. So I'm
Yes,
really
we do have the choice to get dumbbells.
obviously.
They still
So
ship packages.
yeah, I mean I'm like overwhelmed like with like pretty much or with all my clients, and actually also with like pretty much everything I see on Instagram. Like everybody, like nobody. I mean, obviously we all kind of a little bit like depressed that we can't go into the gym, but like everybody's like just accepting it somewhat. At least like in the last 48 hours, 72 hours, whatsoever, at least in Germany. And we are gonna find a way. And like literally everybody is like buying old equipment, looking on eBay or just showing around. And I have clients who invested like just a shit ton of money, like just right now to actually continuously train. So, I mean, as pretty much in everything in bodybuilding, there's like you have to put in work, yeah, even if it's like in form of like money or investment, to buy some basic equipment at least. So anyway,
Let's be honest. A pair of dumbbells that's not very heavy. You don't need them to be very heavy. Maybe costs like 50 euros, maybe 75 euros with delivery. I mean, that's a very, very high end price. It's pretty expensive. I mean, 75 euros is like people spend that at the bar once a night, like
yeah,
that's not even a grocery bill. I
it's
mean,
basically priorities.
like that's it. You buy clothes that cost 75 euros. You do that 10 times a year. Why don't you just buy fewer clothes? You don't need to go out anymore. So you don't need your going out clothes for a while. Just buy some dumbbells and all you need is one pair and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I bought my pair of dumbbells that I just ordered. Is like 30 kgs total, so 15 kgs each dumbbell. But I bought more weight, and I'm now at like 80 euros for two 30 kg dumbbells, which
That's really good. Those are
was
some pretty heavy dumbbells too.
which yeah, I mean yeah. Pretty much the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is like hip hinging, because like literally 30 kg dumbbells is nothing for my I can easily do that like
And
60 kgs for
I'm not concerned about hip hinging, and I can explain why.
just go ahead, man.
Hell yeah. So what do you want out of hip hinging? Because you're a bodybuilder. What muscles are you trying to target?
My hamstrings and my glutes to some extent.
Cool. So hamstrings can be targeted with a variety of repetition ranges. And though they usually prefer the heavy ranges, for months on end, they can see robust hypertrophy from very high repetition ranges. Additionally, your hamstrings are often very easily fatigable, which means they come very close to failure and stay there for successive sets with relatively limited rest. Especially if you have straps, what you can do is take one 30 kg dumbbell in each hand after warming up and do super strict, super deep, stiff-legged deadlifts. I'm talking about you might even want to stand on a staircase and touch the dumbbells below the ground if you have the flexibility in your lower back, or sorry, in your hips. But you probably don't, like I probably don't. So just touching the dumbbells to the ground or even close, keeping your knees real far back gives you a painful stretch on your hamstrings, absolutely enough tension to cause growth. And you're going to do that for sets of, well, 1 or 0 from fail. And that's a real big point, is when you have a high degree of loading to cause stimulus and fatigue, you have to stay a little shy of failure, especially at the beginning of the meso. When your degree of loading is low, you can approach failure more because, first of all, you have to cause a robust stimulus. And second of all, it doesn't cause a ton of fatigue anymore because the loading is super low. So the failure proximity is probably not as fatiguing. So what you do is you take whatever dumbbells you have, you do stiff-legged deadlifts with them. And when you do stiff-legged deadlifts with them, you do them in the 20 to 40 rep range even. Is very, very effective. And you might think, holy shit, that's a lot of reps. How many sets am I doing? Well, you do one of those sets and then you rest maybe 5 to 10 seconds, taking 3 to 5 deep breaths, and you go again. You're essentially training Myo rep style. And then so the next piece of advice is people usually train, 2-3 sets of stiff-legged deadlifts and they move on to something else, or that's it. That's all the hamstrings can handle. You have to pump up your volume. I wouldn't do this right away. I would ease into it as usual, but you might be in a position where you have to do, 6 to 10 sets of stiff-legged deadlifts back to back to back to back. Folks listening at home, I promise you, I put my professional reputation on the line. That will fuck you up. You will beg for a time when your hamstrings weren't that sore. And you don't have to get them that sore because we know too much soreness is bad for growth, so don't overdo it. Here's another quick suggestion. You can do B-stance stiff-legged deadlifts in which one foot is ahead of the other. That's one hamstring at a time. Oh my God, you are going to burn in hamstring hell. If you really haven't had enough, then if you have anyone that lives with you, and most people do, you pre-exhaust with stiff-legged deadlifts, and then you immediately lie down on the ground, hold something, that person pulls your feet back for you, and then you come back and they pull your feet, come back, so you're doing leg curls at home. Do those also Myo rep style. First set is maybe 15 to 30. Next set, only 10 seconds break. It is going to be brutal. You will be cramping. You won't be able to go up and down the stairs in your house. You won't be able to take a shit. You shouldn't train that hard, but the potential for training that hard is absolutely there. When you get tired of doing stiff-legged deadlifts, you can alter your foot position. Wide stance stiff-legged deadlifts hit different parts of your hamstrings. The narrow stance, the medium stance. We have the B stance. So already we have like 4 stances. Potentially you can put dumbbells on your shoulders and do good mornings, especially if pre-exhausted with some leg curling with partner assistance. If you have a band, leg curls come in handy with a band. All of a sudden, hamstrings are taken care of. And guess what? Your glutes have been working that entire time. Add in the volume that you have from your squatting that you can do, which we can talk about in a bit as how to modify squatting, and the lunging you can do, tons of different kinds of lunging, and the single leg squatting you can do. And your glutes have tons of volume just from all that. If you're interested in more glute work after that, then you can for sure use your limited amount of weight to do the same Myo rep style training with dumbbells or with a band, with glute extensions of various kinds. Although, hip thrusts after that much leg work for hamstrings and for quads, you may not need a whole lot of them to get the job done.
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, I was thinking actually doing like this staggered stance RDL with the 30 kg dumbbell and just do like a slow eccentric and like a pause in the bottom. That would
Great.
probably get me around sub 30 reps. I mean, I normally do like 60 kgs for paused 15s. But if I really, really do the long pauses and slow down the eccentric and maybe even pre-exhaust with some like bodyweight leg curls, the way you described them, I just did them with the towel and laying just on my back, holding myself at my couch, and then just curling my body weight, if that makes sense.
Sure.
With my legs, and that actually worked really, really well. I tried banded RDLs, but I was doing like 50 reps and I was like 200 reps in reserve, and I was like, fuck
Banded
this.
RDLs are stupid because the top position is the hardest and it's the least relevant position for the RDL. You would need an inverse magic band to get the most out of RDLs.
It was a pretty hard band, to my defense. So
Sure.
I thought I would get something out of there, but it wasn't really happening. So I was then just doing the body weight leg curls, and it worked quite well.
Sure.
But I would say just, I mean, with the RDL or with the good morning the example you gave, which is actually a pretty good idea to just hold the dumbbell up above your head or behind your head.
Yep.
You can still load that even more by just putting on a backpack. And I mean, obviously the weight is not up there, but it still will give you some more loading on the back. And I mean, I have just, because I ordered my dumbbells, but they weren't there yet, and I just took my deload. Like retrospectively, I would probably deload this week, but we all didn't know
Sure,
that.
of course.
So
Right.
yeah, they are just coming like at the end of the week, so I had to get in some kind of maintenance workout at least, and
Yeah.
I could easily destroy my quads. That was no problem at all. But hamstrings were quite some. They were at least harder to fatigue with that limited of equipment. And I mean, back was suboptimal as well. I now have a pull-up bar, which I think is probably the smartest investment other than dumbbells, because you can
If you can
do
do the
like,
reps, yes.
you can pretty much do all kinds of pull-up variations, and you can even, if you have an adjustable pull-up bar, which makes sure that your door can actually handle that.
Yeah.
So and buy a good one. Don't buy the cheapest one you can find, because you will eventually just die.
Yep. You'll just
You-
fall right off.
I'm still a little bit concerned. It's like I hang on there and I'm like, but it really works. So you
Just
can,
keep your feet under you and you'll be okay.
yeah, I do that, and try to not smash your face with the
Yeah, for
with
sure.
the pull-up bar. But you can then adjust it actually lower and do some inverted rows with that. And
Yeah.
inverted rows are pretty easily loaded as well. So you can just put something on your tummy and just brace and then do inverted rows.
For sure, for sure. Let's chat about quads really quick, because people are probably wondering, how the hell do you train quads?
I put on my backpack with like, I think it was like around 20 kgs of water weight in bottles. I have a pretty big backpack. And I put on my band as well, like just around my neck. Funny thing is, that was actually my pump up band for 2019, and after that my whole white shirt was completely full of like
no.
bodybuilding color. Tan, yeah. But it was quite a cool moment after I realized that it's actually, like, I was like, fuck,
Memories.
right in the feels. And yeah, I pretty much did split squats with that. Really slow, controlled eccentric, pause at the bottom, and I did like 12 reps and I gassed out. It's pretty much,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah.
so if you have a staircase or a chair, rear foot elevated split squats are really, really good. I would actually consider those a relatively advanced exercise that you don't need to do. Like if you're really strong and really big, you might need to do rear foot elevated split squats. But the vast majority of people don't even need to do that. So in the
Probably
upcoming product
lunge.
releasing RP, we don't even have them listed, but you can always do them. Because we don't want people to kill themselves trying it. They're really, really hard if you're just a recreational workout person. So what you can do before you get to those, and there's maybe, we don't know how long this thing is going to keep going. So if you can get a great stimulus out of the easier stuff, maybe save the later stuff for a few mesocycles in, right? So first of all, you can just do dumbbell squats, put the dumbbells on your shoulders, and just do regular squats. But there's ways to modify, really, really target the quads. Find a big, thick set or just one textbook at home or some kind of thick book or any kind of block that's anywhere between, 1 centimeter is okay. It's a good start. But really between 3 and 5 centimeters is how big you want it to be. Put your heels on it, put your toes on the ground. Stance width isn't super important, as you'll see, because just anything will nail your quads anyway. And put some weight on, maybe a backpack, maybe some dumbbells. Slow eccentric, full pause at the bottom, no pause at the top, and the squat is essentially now so upright. It's like a sissy squat,
Yeah.
pretty close, and it blasts your quads into the moon. And again, Don't do straight sets. Do myo-rep sets where between every set you take 5 to 10 seconds of break and then you go again and again and again and approach failure. It's going to hurt a ton. If you do that, oh my God, your quads are going to be on fire. In addition to that, forward lunges, reverse lunges, any sort of lunge work also hits your quads a ton and hits your glutes as well. You can do squats that are sumo stance, normal stance, close stance, pause, no pause, slow eccentric, normal speed. All of a sudden you have enough variance to for sure build a weekly program.
Yeah.
Probably have enough variance to rotate to get 3 mesocycles out of it. And I would be quite surprised, not shocked, but quite surprised if the no gym thing lasts more than 3 or 4 months. And it's highly unlikely that it will.
Let's hope so. Yeah, it definitely makes sense that you at RP program that in your home workouts, because like initially before the gyms closed, I mean, in the US they are still open some at some areas. Yeah. So it just makes sense because like probably the targeted buyers or the targeted group that you actually want to target with the book, like before this whole Corona crisis, were probably people that are less advanced, like probably beginners that don't really want to go to the gym. So
Exactly.
it just makes sense that you program those like less advanced exercises in there. I mean, for most of my clients, a split squat is no problem at all. Like a heel elevated split squats, and that's usually the targeted group I will base all my content about. So yeah, I mean, I just noticed that it will probably take me a while to adjust to the neurological pattern and just the movement pattern because I was wobbling as hell.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, but still, you can, like, even with the backpack and just a strong band, it was still quite some resistance. Like, right now I can do 12 or something. I did 12 or something in my first set. Maybe I can do 20 in a few weeks, but that's probably about it. Like, and if I have dumbbells, I can easily load those up. Like, I can just do regular training.
For sure. Let's talk about so arm training is really easy. All kinds of different
Obviously.
curls,
Yeah.
overhead extensions with dumbbells. You can even do skull crushers with dumbbells lying on the ground. Super easy.
Lying on the
There is,
couch.
there is. That's right. There is one exercise that I have that is very, very difficult to do that most people can't do, but advanced people might be able to do. And I would warm up for this and ease into it. It is included in one of our programs, but it is saved for later in the mesocycles, and we'll see how many people will be able to do this. It is so what a skull crusher is to a push-up, what a skull crusher is to a bench press. This is to a push-up. So it's a push-up in which you lie down, your whole forearm touches the ground, and then you press up like that, and then you press back down. It's really just here. It is a skull crusher using your body weight.
Yeah.
That's if someone can do 50 plus push-ups. That is a tricep exercise from hell. Find a surface that's hard and has a good friction. Do those. You might not even have to do them myo-rep style because they might be so difficult. You only get like 8 to 12 of them. And they're an excellent exercise. If you want an easier version, just essentially do the same inverted skull crushers, but do them on a staircase. So you can grab one of the stairs and do this, right? And you may be able to put your hips up a little bit. That helps some people, and it's not as difficult. This is an absolutely brutal exercise.
Yeah.
And it can give you all the heavy tricep training you need. Also, you can do different grip widths, so it's some variation there. And then with dumbbells, you can do everything else you need for triceps, so that's good. Shoulders, barely notice anything is gone. Bent laterals, bent face pulls, side laterals, rear laterals, Alberto Nunez laterals, upright rows of different kinds. I mean, your delts are going to be great. Your traps, no problem. You can do all kinds of shrugs, and delt work helps with the traps a lot. Grip work is totally fine. Calves, all you need is a staircase, and you can do one-legged, two-legged, rest pause, and all that stuff. Annihilated. Chest is an interesting one, but pretty easy. If you can get something to do deficit push-ups between, and you can do them myo-rep style, and if you have someone at home living with you who can hold a dumbbell on your back while you do them, I mean, you have to be godlike strong to not grow from that sort of thing. Push-ups can be done close grip, wide grip, inverted on a chair. So
Yeah.
that hits your upper pecs a little bit more. And then you can also do flies like a floor press style. You can do floor press flies where you just lie down with your dumbbells on the ground. You don't even need a bench, and you can just fly up and slow control and fly down. Playing with the slow eccentrics with pauses, that takes care of almost everything you need. You know, it's funny. When I first started lifting in a gym, I had already had a very big and muscular chest, because before I started going to the gym, I said, you know what? Because I mostly just wanted a big chest anyway, and I was going to go to the gym to bench press. I didn't bench press at all. And when I went to the gym, I just did like curls and shoulders and other stuff, because I was at home doing push-ups. I did wide grip push-ups and close grip push-ups and sort of slower eccentric push-ups. And I would get pumps from doing push-ups that were crazy. The first time I ever started benching, not the first time, the second time. The first time I ever benched was just incline presses in ninth grade, and I did like what would be 25 kilos for a set of 10 in the incline, and that was it. Like that's including the barbell, right? So really, really embarrassing. But then when I came back after having done only push-ups of various kinds for like 2 or 3 months, I was bench pressing 60 kilos for reps, just like that, having never bench pressed. And because the chest workout, my chest physically grew. Like it got sore, it got bigger. And I was blown away, like how much you can do with push-ups, and that's never left. Charlie and I still, even when we're going to gyms, or we were, a week ago, or part of our, for literally maybe 4 months now, we've done it before for many months as well, push-ups between blocks, either weighted or not, super deep deficit push-ups on an easier pushing day. Oh my God, they mess you up. They're super great. And I will say, the deficit push-up between blocks I use as an example in lectures about an exercise with a very, very good stimulus to fatigue ratio. It just doesn't beat you up as much as bench pressing with barbells, but because of the stretch, because of the contraction, something about deficit push-ups is just such a great stimulus for the pecs. And you can get push-up handles if you want, or just any kind of blocks will do. So chest, I think, is taken care of. Back is a little bit of a challenge, but I think I have some really cool insights on back training. Would you like to hear them?
Absolutely. No.
All right.
No, I
No,
don't.
shut up. So if anyone is curious, going into my Instagram, you can scroll back a few weeks, and we've been demonstrating an exercise we're doing called the flexion row, which I, quote unquote, invented my ass. I'm sure it's been done by a trillion people before. It is where, instead of maintaining an arched lower back and just letting your arms do the pulling and protracting and retracting, you take dumbbells or barbells. In this case, dumbbells are totally fine. And for some people, they're going to be so flexible that they might actually need to stand at the end of a staircase and push the dumbbells below the actual floor. What you're going to do is you're going to tighten up your hamstrings just a little bit, like you're doing a stiff-legged deadlift or like a regular bent row. So because you don't want your hips to rotate completely down. Tighten up your hamstrings. Let your entire upper back round and your lower back round. You're rounded over completely as you're stretched forward with the dumbbells. And then as you row the dumbbells to your hips, you arch completely into a strict arch like this. So your hips never move. But basically, here's your legs, here's your head, here's your hips, right? You go like this, and then you go bam, and all the way for a big stretch. Meanwhile, at the bottom position here, your arms are super stretched, your shoulders are relaxed, and then you come back and arch as you bring your arms in. The degree to which this fucks up the spinal erectors is difficult to overemphasize. Try it. You're going to do like 20 kilos for a set of 10. You're like, oh my God, I can't even stay upright anymore. Do not do it before other exercises, because you just will be totally toast. For anything like, don't do it before squats or anything that requires spinal rigidity, because you're not going to be able to do it. And then, so that exercise is awesome for getting a great stimulus. What you might want to do is do regular dumbbell bent rows where you go super, super deep in a camber, but you maintain relatively flat and you only arch and rotate like this. Start with those. If you can get some reasonable reps, do myo reps like that with dumbbells. Different rowing positions, out, rows in, rows to the hips, rows to the face, all hit different parts of your back. So those are all great. Maybe the second exercise for back, you can try doing some of those flexion rows where you flex the whole spine and extend the whole spine. Brutality will ensue. And then lastly, a very interesting exercise, especially works well for people that are very flexible, and lots of people are. What you do is you get into the bottom position of the flexion row. This works best if you stand right at the edge of a staircase. Do not fall down. You'll fucking kill yourself. Maybe have a spotter to like wait for you to fall just in case. So you reach all the way down, you're like over the staircase, and you're hanging your dumbbells over, sometimes below the actual staircase. And then maintaining that position of spinal flexion, notice your arms are now angled sort of at a 45-degree angle away. You row without any spinal motion. You essentially pull the dumbbells to outside of your shoulders. It's essentially like a lat pull down while you lean back. This angle replicated directly into gravity. Then you hit different parts of your lats that you usually would be able to hit with pull down machines and other things like that. If you don't have a place to do pull-ups, this is an excellent exercise. If you do have a place to do pull-ups, it can fit the high rep part of your lat pulling, because what you have small dumbbells, you can do a whole lot of those. It hits your lats super well. People are concerned with spinal flexion under load. Look, it's like 15 kilos in each hand. If you get a spinal disc herniation under that much load, you probably shouldn't be buying your own groceries. You know what I mean? So it's totally safe, super brutal, super effective, and because of the stabilization component, it fucks up the rest of your back as well. Between those few exercises, man, you can make serious back gains. What I will say, I have some public service announcement. I did this on the RP podcast yesterday. Don't be open-minded, and don't confine yourself to the same exercises you always did. For example, people will be like, dumbbells, okay, back, okay, one-arm dumbbell rows. You don't have 80 kilos. You know what I mean? You just don't, very likely. So where are you going to do them? Where are you going to, like, this just, yes, with a really heavy dumbbell and a really great bench, you can do that. But you don't. So there's other exercises you would probably not. Why would I almost never do these dumbbell weird inverted pull down things at a gym? Because I have a fucking pull down bar at a gym and I don't have to do it, right? But you don't have that anymore. So you're going to be doing some unique exercises that when people say, like, oh man, I love this exercise, I'm going to bring it to my regular gym stuff now. Well, for some of these exercises like flexion rows, totally. But maybe for some of these weird like inverted pull down things, you might not ever bring it back to the gym. It's like if you're stuck on a deserted island, you might eat parts of trees you normally wouldn't eat. And then you survive and the ship picks you up and they say, hey, did you learn any good recipes? You're like, no, that tree tasted like shit. I'll never eat it again. But while you're there, you might as well not be like, wow, I wish they had fettuccine Alfredo. Well, they're never going to have that on a deserted island. So maybe you might as well start eating that kind of tree bark that still has calories. You know what I mean? So some open-mindedness, I think, is a real good idea, making the best with what you have. And that open-mindedness needs to extend beyond the regular dumbbell exercises. Here's another really easy example. People say, okay, I got dumbbells. I'm training my chest. I'm going to do dumbbell presses. No, you're not. You don't have a bench. So you can't get full range of motion. You might be able to do dumbbell floor presses, but they kind of suck. And then so it turns out your dumbbells are not for pressing anymore. Push-ups are going to be most of your chest training.
Yeah, agree with a lot of things you just said. And I mean, a floor press can be an okay exercise, but like for most people...
With a lot of weight.
Yeah, with a lot of weight. Or what you can try is if you can at least hold yourself. I mean, you could do it like unilaterally. You can just do unilateral dumbbell bench on your couch, pretty much, if you can hold yourself on the other side. But
the muscle activation from that might be not what you want because of the instability, right?
Yeah, could be the case. But I mean, it's a crazy time to be alive. I mean, doing sky crushers on your couch or something.
Sure.
I mean, just chilling on the couch doing sky crushers and stuff. So I would dive a little bit deeper into the theory of actually a little bit more light load training. And my question would be like, what do we need to adjust when load gets really light and again sub 30% 1RM or for practicality reasons like 30 plus reps? And could you explain the theory and physiology behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that The physiology is that you want to challenge, especially your faster twitch muscle fibers. They usually just won't get challenged if the load is too light, which means you need to get pretty close to failure because that's when they tend to turn on more. Getting close to failure also sequesters metabolites better, and it probably gives you a better pump, which is probably itself hypertrophic. So if you're doing very light load training, getting very, very close to failure is probably a good idea. So if you're doing sets of 5 very heavy, you can be 3 or 4 away from fail and get really robust hypertrophic stimulus. If you're doing sets of 35 or 40, you should be 1 or 0 reps from failure. Otherwise, you won't get a very good hypertrophic stimulus. Second of all, if you have a situation in which you're doing very high reps and then you're resting a long time between sets, you'll get very many sets of very high reps. But it turns out most of those reps are not very hypertrophic or the most hypertrophic. There's sort of lead-in reps until you get very fatigued. And only the last 5 to 10 reps are the most hypertrophic. Now notice all the reps cause hypertrophy, but the last one's probably a bit more. So what you could do is use the sort of myoreps concept and take very small breaks on especially the exercises in which you're not systemically limited, which should be most of them because they're so light. And at that point, with the myorep situation, you can make sure that you're not only getting to failure on your first set, but always staying close to failure on successive sets. 5 to 10 seconds rest is probably the best way to go about that. You don't want to take really long breaks between repetitions. So a lot of people would do squats. They would go all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, brace. You could just drop bracing completely out of the window. You don't need to brace when you're lifting with 20 kilos. You should be doing your reps. You can lock out every rep and rest for a split second, but don't rest forever because you'll just have to do more reps. Usually that's not a problem if you can modulate the load, but in this case you can't. You want, this is a situation in which continuous tension on the muscles is probably for the first time has an advantage. People say in the gym, constant tension, bro, but in the gym you don't need constant tension because you can just use heavier weight, use breaks between reps, and get the best of both worlds, more reps and higher tension. Here, that's not an option, right? So constant tension is probably a bit more of a concern at this point. And sort of with those things in mind, the other thing I would say is leverage, right? A lot of times in the gym, especially in the drug-free lifting community, people are sort of powerlifters, sort of bodybuilders, sort of both. And a lot of the stuff that you learn from powerlifting, they take in their bodybuilding training. When they do bodybuilding bench press, they'll take an arch and retraction, and they'll still do deadlifts for bodybuilding and stuff like that. A lot of those lifts, things like low bar squats especially, the weight is so heavy that it doesn't matter that you leverage yourself to lift more of it. It still affects your muscles. In this context of at-home training, you have to leverage your muscles to be as in a poor position as possible to get help from leverage advantage or from other muscles and really want to isolate them, which is why squatting with a big heel, for example, is a real good idea because that almost exclusively isolates your quadriceps. Is it allowing you to lift less weight? Yes, but that's a really good thing because you don't have that much weight to lift. So, if you could do deficit push-ups, get a bigger stretch, that's really good. Real full range of motion on stuff because you don't have the benefit of saying, well, I don't want to go for super full range of motion because I'm trying to maximize tension. Well, you can't maximize tension anymore, so you have to maximize leverage, and a lot of that means you're going to go for extra range of motion and normally take positions that you normally wouldn't.
Yeah, I think doing, especially if you can't really load something, taking things closer to failure and maybe do slightly more volume is probably a good idea.
I agree with the volume idea. I would just so the volume idea is actually we have an article that's going to be finished in a couple days here at RP about like these recommendations, right? The use more volume is is one of the recommendations. It's one of the 8 recommendations we make, but you have to be very careful with that because people get overexcited, right? Like they're at home, they're stir crazy. They see this recommendations, they see more volume, they do 10 sets of deep deficit push-ups, and then they can't move their chest for a week. So, Jan, you're absolutely correct when you say more volume, but more volume needs to be on an auto-regulated as-need basis. So start with a normal volume, and if something – look, if you're doing squats and you don't have a quad pump and you don't have any perception of fatigue in the muscle, then keep doing squats, right? But if you have – if you're doing if you did 3 sets of heel elevated squats, you can barely walk – you have a huge pump, and you feel like the muscle's so weak you're going to collapse and it's like, shaking on you, don't do another 6 sets because you just save those for later for when you're recovered. So yes, more volume as needed might not be needed in many cases.
Yeah, and I think even like just from a mental standpoint, actually programming reps in reserve, or actually programming reps in reserve in like really, really high rep sets is pretty difficult to gauge anyway.
Yes.
And I think I mean, you will probably get used to it once you train for a few weeks at home and do a lot of light work stuff. But in the first few sessions, like a set of 30 plus, you will probably have some reps in reserve, even though you don't think so, just
Sure.
because of the pain and the mental barrier to continue.
I have a
So,
way around that doesn't require you to train to failure every time, and it doesn't require you to consistently use reps in reserve. So here's how this works. The first session, the first microcycle, the first week you do all your exercises, you put together your at-home training plan. Go until you are 2 to 3 reps shy of failure. And don't worry about it being super close, right? Even if you're 5 or 6 shy of failure, you'll still get some kind of decent stimulus. You'll be okay. Write your reps down. Every single microcycle after, at least match those reps that you wrote down, or add a rep, or even add 2, if you can still do them. So that real close to failure training conserves itself, because for example, let's say you did 27 squats on heel elevated with your dumbbells in week number 1. Your goal for week number 2 is at least 27. If you get 27 again, let's say your failure was really 30. Your 3 RIR. If you at least get 27 next time and your failure point is 31 because you've expanded your abilities, at least you're still 4 RIR. So if you're going to, because it's easy to punk out at like rep 23 and be like, oh, I'm tired, right? But now you're like, 8 reps away from failure or something like that? That's too many. So at least that week 1 standard, coming close to failure on that week 1, gives you a minimum threshold to hit. And then challenge yourself. If you can still move, add a rep. And if you can do another rep, add 2. That way, week 1, you do 27 reps. Remember, the load doesn't change. Week 2, you do 28. Week 3, you feel great, you do 30. That's your new standard. Week 4, you do 30 again, and it's brutal, and you can barely move. Week 5, you do 27, and you fall. You just hit your MRV. Congratulations. Time to deload. How do you know you hit your MRV? But it's literally the same load, and you cannot perform in a completely objective sense. The good thing is with bodyweight training, progressions are super simple because you just add reps every microcycle, and MRV calculations are simple because it's not like, well, I did 100 kilos last time for 8. This time I did 6, but it's 110 kilos. What's the math? There's no math. It's the same load, right? So when you know you're underperforming, rep progressions are something Charlie and I use in our training, even when we have access to gyms, all the time. With dumbbells, they work incredibly well. You set yourself a standard on microcycle 1, a little shy of failure, and then you etch and you etch and you etch. 1 more rep, stable. 0 reps, 1 more rep, stable, so on and so forth. Sometimes 2 reps if you're feeling really good. And that way you know you're not bullshitting yourself. And also you don't have to count RIR. You just have to count RIR the first time. So go hard the first time and then just match your reps from then on. If you add sets, it's going to be like, okay, so my new set, last time I did 4 sets, this time I'm doing 5. So what's my rep number on the 5th set? Well, just watch how your drop off goes. Let's say you did 30, 10, 9, 8. Now this time you have to add a 5th set. What do you think it's going to be? It's not going to be 4. You're fucking kidding yourself. It's not going to be 15 because there's no way it goes 10, 9, 8 and you do 15. What's your best guess? 7, right? Yeah. So do 7. That's your goal. And if you still feel good, do 8 and then awesome. But if you hit only 6 and you're like, oh, you can't move, well, look, then that's how much fatigue it was. So there's a lot of personal honesty, but you don't have to run RAR through your head all the time. You just have to run it once in the first week, and then everything else really tends to plan itself out. And those reps from the first week give you a baseline of objective performance above which you will rise. And when you fall at some point, MRV, deload, repeat.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, you can use that kind of methodology a lot in your normal training as well. And that also helps with people that may just overthink reps in reserve like totally. Yeah. And are really like paralyzed because they think they don't gauge it on the point all the time, and
Sure,
it's
sure.
just about getting into the ballpark of your rep and reserve ranges maybe,
That's it.
and not hitting the exact rep and
So
reserve
to, so
like
to
on
be
every set
completely
every
honest,
week. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Even when we're talking about training in normal circumstances at a gym, for many people, I am not a big fan of the every set is an RAR calculation training, because some people psychologically just don't deal well with that. Like you pointed out, they way overthink it and they get nervous about it, and other people just suck at it. So what I like to do is have people keep a training log. All they need to do in their first week is get roughly 3 or 4 RAR. And in this case, with at home training, roughly 2 RAR. The next week, they know what they have to hit at least. Every time I train people in person, they lie down on the bench press. I'm like, how many reps? They're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, how many did you hit last week? They're like, 10. I'm like, great. It's 2.5 kilos more this time. Hit at least 10. They usually hit 10, and it's exactly the RIR visually that you want. You're like, oh, okay, wow, that was really 2 RIR. If it's not, you can always do one more rep. But people say, like, well, what if you're not auto-regulating and you're super fatigued? That's easy to detect. Let's say you did 10 at 100 kilos last time. This time it's 102.5 kilos. Your goal is 10 on the first set. You get to 8, and it's like barely moving. Just rack the weight. It's not an Einsteinian level of thought you have to have about this. And be like, wow, I'm super fucking fatigued. Let's see how I do in my next set. You get 6 instead of the 8 you did on the second set. Like, okay, something's off. I'm going to take a mini light session, this session, and see how the next half of the week goes. And if the next half of the week you're still fucked up, you hit your MRV, no big deal. It's been a shitty week. Deload and then restart. People think for some reason that, their strength and ability to do reps changes wildly week to week. If you're eating well, you're sleeping well, and you have consistent technique, and even if you don't, if your technique is improving, hitting that minimum threshold of what you did in the first week as far as reps is not that hard. Almost never, even in contest prep, have I seen people undershoot their reps in normal situations. Week 1, 3 RIR, you'll be able to hit at least that many reps with that much weight, if not more weight, and often more reps. So having that minimum standard, what I'm saying is this, don't just do some push-ups. And someone says, like, hey, how many push-ups did you do? Like, I did 5 sets to failure. Be like, did you count? Be like, no. How the hell do you know if you're getting great workouts? You know you're getting great workouts because you have a pump, you have soreness, so on and so forth. But how do you have the kind of workouts that people like your clients who are serious athletes have at home? How do they know they're progressing? By counting the reps and adding where they can. That's it. That's it. Don't worry about RAR too much. Just fucking get as many reps as you did last week and then maybe add another one. By the end of the 6-week period, you started squatting with the 20-kilo dumbbells. You did, 30, 15, 14, etc. Now you're doing 36 reps on a first set. Your quads almost certainly grew, and you know how much more effort you have to put in to go that much harder.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that current situation are just like pretty much throwing every training variable out of the window and just train to failure and just do like something,
Sure. You
which
could
I
do
think
better
is
than that.
still better than nothing.
Yes,
Because
but you
there
can
are
do better
also
than that.
a lot of people that just do nothing because they don't have a gym and they think
For
they
sure.
will lose all their shit, but obviously that's not the case. But I also think if you have at least like some slight amount of equipment that like still normal training variables and training like methodology applies.
100%.
And yeah, Corona doesn't mean you automatically train 0 reps in reserve on everything, especially if you
No,
have some equipment.
sure. And it can mean you train closer to failure, and it can mean you train 0
Yeah.
reps, but you still have to track your performance. Here's another one. If you go to failure all the time and you don't count your reps, how do you know when you hit your MRV? I mean, you have no idea. You could be over your MRV for weeks and have no idea. You're like, yeah, I feel like I used to do more push-ups than this. I was doing like 30, but now I'm doing like 20. My chest must be really beat up. What the hell is wrong with you? Count your reps so that you know how many reps you're adding week to week. And when you can't add reps anymore, you're probably pretty fatigued. And when your reps start to decline, it's time to deload, time to repeat. I will say, public service announcement, hardcore super hypocaloric dieting does lower immune system response, as does incredibly hard training. So if you're concerned about your immune response, I wouldn't hardcore diet with super low calories, and I wouldn't do training that's very overreaching. You have those workouts or weeks where you're so delirious with training you just can't barely move. Maybe not the best time if you want your immune system at its absolute finest.
Yeah. What I think, and that this would be actually the next and the final training question, what there is probably a good solution, which is also probably pretty productive for most cases, is like, what are your thoughts on body part specialization in a time frame? Because that like overall probably reduces your systemic fatigue, although it increases your local fatigue in the specialized muscle.
Yeah.
But what I kind of do with a lot of clients right now is kind of MEV-ishing their legs and
Yep.
like just pumping like certain parts of the upper body, because like literally your delts or your arms are so easy to train even with like small dumbbells, and you
Yep.
can like just from opening up all those capacities from your usual leg training, you can do tons of delt work and you will grow like crazy on your delts, for example, in that time frame. And I
Yep.
think for a lot of people that's actually a pretty productive use of the time right now.
100%
What do
agreed,
you think about
especially
that?
for very good idea, especially for muscles like delts, potentially forearms, biceps, traps. Now's the time where you can make fucking crazy gains because you can just throw the kitchen sink at your delts and biceps, especially, and there's nothing stopping you from just going completely ham on
Your
those.
joints,
Yeah, right.
maybe.
Well, exactly. Sanity. But, bicep training doesn't usually hurt the joints unless you do something real wacky. That's the deal. But again, going ham means starting at your MEV and going to your new higher MRV because it's not systemically limited. What I really hate is when people are like, I'm doing a delt priority program, and it's like 60 sets of delts. And I'm like, you're never going to recover from that. And they're like, it's a priority program. I'm like, right. Like, you're an idiot. It's like saying I'm really hungry and then ordering a refrigerator full of food. Like, we'll never eat that. So what are you doing? Right? You're never going to recover from that. So don't do it. Priority training means you back burner a lot of other things and then really push delts to their limits. That is not to say they don't have limits anymore.
Yeah, totally. You still have a local MRV.
100%.
And I think it's probably a good time frame for just like general upper body stuff, like lower body. If you're relatively advanced, to really grow your upper body in that time frame. I mean, it's possible maybe, but it requires some serious effort.
Sure.
And I mean, as you said, you can do stuff like sissy heel elevated squats or whatsoever and load them as much as you can, but you will probably need to have a shit ton of do a shit ton of that to
Yeah.
actually grow if you're quite advanced.
Yeah.
And I
One
mean,
more recommendation really quick while we're at it. If you find that you're doing 8 sets of chest, 8 sets of quads, so on and so forth, and you barely get sore, barely get a pump, and you're ready to train the next day or the day after instead of 2 or 3 days later like you used to, expand your frequency.
yeah, absolutely.
Also, motherfucker, you at home doing nothing, you might as well train 2 times a day, bro.
Yeah, that's
Split up your training. So you can train 12 sessions a week and hammer the fuck out of everything. You can train most muscles every day or 4 or 5 days a week. And you will, Menno Henselman style, just on the frequency pulse alone, you may get your best gains ever in a bunch of your muscles and have no trouble at all maintaining muscles on the rest of them. Give it some thought. It's a real thing.
yeah, absolutely. It's quite funny. I have a client who he has relatively weak legs, like just genetically in terms of his like whole body development. And before that we were actually running leg specialization, which you have
Okay.
to be some type of human anyways to actually do that. And because it was really, when I was actually programming that, I was kind of sad for the guy, but he did it anyways, had some amazing gains, and now he's restricted to his home equipment. And he was like, I was like, how many times do you want to train? And he was like, do whatever you want to. And I was like,
Famous last words.
and I was like, yeah, let's go 10 times per week. And yeah, now he's training 10 times per week. And that's
Awesome.
not even the most you can probably push, but I think for right now he's fine with 10 times, and yeah, he will make some amazing upper body gains. I think so.
Yeah, if he survives.
If he survived,
If he's, you know,
he survived the leg specialization for real, and
there you go. So he's well on his way. This is a really terrible, morbid joke, but why not? Humor is always nice in times like these. You get like you go to his funeral like in a couple months, and people there watching, they're like, "Oh my God, he was so young. Like he's so sad. Like coronavirus. Like no, actually leg training at home. Yeah, believe it or not, he just
leg training
trained
at all.
himself to his grave. He died doing what he loved. That's all we have, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I had the nutrition question, but I think it's really, if you have enough equipment, you can, and if you decide to, I mean, that's just my standpoint. If you're not crazy lean right now and you want to diet and you are aware of the health implication that the dieting may have on your body, and you have enough equipment on hand and you really want it, then probably go for it. I would probably advise a little bit less surplus if you want to continue gaining, especially if you do like
Yeah.
specialization.
Yep, less surplus and less of a deficit if you want to cut because you don't want to hamper your immune system too much.
Yeah, and I think yeah, that was actually a question. Do you think you should have less surplus if you want to continue gain right now,
Yeah, just because.
especially if you do specialization?
Yes, for sure, because you're not gaining as much total muscle per unit of time. If you're doing whole body and you really want to do that 12 session a week insanity, then you actually may not need to lower the degree of your surplus, but it's always a little better just to see how it goes. Though you could find that you're gaining incredibly rapidly, and the surplus should essentially just be adjusted to your gain, rates. And if you're getting great workouts and your muscles are all constantly sore, you need the surplus that you need. There's not like if you feel like your workouts are understimulative, your systemically, your surplus should adjust itself accordingly. So, and one thing that I mentioned in the RP Strength podcasts, which I encourage folks to go seek out as well as an at-home training episode, you know, other than not dieting extremely hard and compromising your immunity temporarily, the diet doesn't change, motherfuckers, because two things. First of all, grocery stores are still open. Second of all, food delivery service is still a thing. And third of all, if anything, you might be buying foods that are less delicious. You're going to fewer restaurants, fewer pizza deliveries. You are in the FPRH, zone where you're eating, cans of chicken and oatmeal. That's a great time to stick to your diet. And, shameless plug, the RP Diet app, well, mostly in the United States and some of Europe, has all the foods you buy in MyFitnessPal has all of them. You can log all of your foods, and usually they're even easier to log because you're not going out to a weird taco restaurant anymore that's not on MyFitnessPal. You're staying at home eating oatmeal that has a label and you can scan it. So people are saying, what do I do about my diet? Sorry for the language. Motherfucker, what do you mean, what do you do about your diet? You can train at home just fine. You can diet at home. You're at home with basic foods. Sometimes even all the rest of the foods because the grocery stores still work fine. People, unfortunately, and this has nothing to do with the current epidemic at all, people, not all people, just some, will want any excuse at all to not do what they're fucking supposed to do, like diet. So anything derails them. They're like, oh, I can't. Like, there's people that are like, oh, I can't lose weight when I travel because there's so many tasty foods. We have other people that I've talked to that are like, I can't gain weight when I travel because there's just so few foods around that I need to eat. Well, they can't fucking very well be both, can it? Either you can eat a shitload of food at the airport and gain weight, or it's too much food and you get too tempted and you can't lose weight. So the same thing that happens in travel happens when people get sequestered at home. They start saying, oh, I can't diet. Like, usually people restricted to very few food choices lose weight. So if you're on a fat loss plan, you know what I'm saying? If you're on a muscle gain plan, it can be a little tougher, but look, grocery delivery is still a thing. The grocery stores still have food in them, and they will continue to have food in them in Western countries. Not an excuse. Sorry, folks.
I mean, to be honest, I get the point, and I think it's really context depending because,
That's
like,
the point.
obviously, if you're pretty heavy and you can still lose weight, and probably like even the acute deficit will not hamper your overall like immune system and overall
Sure.
health.
Sure.
But I think there is even a slight risk in just being acutely in a deficit if you're like a normal person who wants to get leaner, like for aesthetic reason, or like in a bodybuilding context.
In a
Like,
bodybuilding contest, you're not a normal person to begin with. You're an already lean person trying to get leaner. But if you have 20% body fat as a male and you're trying to get to 15, I would love to see the research that hampers immune function. It is highly unlikely that it does. And if you're on a very moderate diet, you're totally fine. And by the way, if you're sequestered, you're not exposed anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that. Once you get out into the world, when they lift a lot of these sequestrations, then you might want your immune system to be up and coming a little bit better.
yeah, I mean, I had the discussion with every client, and I told them that like acutely you will probably depress something, even if it's not much, and
Sure.
especially over the long term and the leaner you get.
Yeah, yeah. Once you start at bodybuilding fat percentages, going down much lower is not a good idea.
Yeah. Um, and last but not least, I just quickly want to tell people that may have trained quite hard for a long, long, long time that this is maybe the time, especially the first month or so, to just
Yes.
maintain and
Yep.
just do like
Take a 2 week active rest.
yeah, even like that. I mean, I did my active rest last week, which was super.
Sure.
Mm, I would love to do it this week, but I just started my maintenance program. So I was kind of skipping my last deload of the last meso of the macro cycle, doing like
Yep.
an active rest week, and I was planning to do a 3 week maintenance. Because I was like, after my prep, I continuously trained really, really hard for 4.5 months, and I was
Sure.
just done with training, like mentally. I just,
Sure. Yeah.
like
Did you get
motivation.
stronger?
Absolutely. Like progress in the gym was amazing, and I think I even made some like physical like gains.
Visible
Even though I
gains.
gained a lot of like body fat as well, which is yeah, what yours
Just part of the
even
process.
yeah part of the process. Um, but at the end, like I mean, motivation in the gym was fine, and I was doing all my stuff, and I was not like sissing it whatsoever. Like I was still training like I would usually do. I didn't skip any session whatsoever. But like the desire to train was relatively low,
Sure.
especially at the end.
Sure. I hear you.
Cool, man. I think there were quite some good insights. That was
Yeah. Hopefully, folks get some value out of this.
cool, man. So if you want to, you can plug anything you want. I know the RP seminar was actually coming up, and we actually bought some tickets for London, but we probably not sure if that will happen. Um,
Seems to be up in the air at this point. Yeah. So we'll see.
do you have any plans with Steve to shift it or whatsoever? Do you know anything about it? Did you
I
talk
don't
about
know
that
anything.
yet?
No, we're actually just completely playing it by ear. And you know, for these next 2 weeks, things are so uncertain that the
Yeah.
act of making plans and changing them is itself a little dubious. So we'll see. We'll see. And, there's a good chance it won't happen, and then it'll happen later. There's a good chance it might still happen. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. The United Kingdom's taken a very different approach to this, as far as I understand, than many other countries. They're still letting children go to school and all this other stuff, and they might be in a different position than everyone.
Yeah. I just talked to a client in the UK, and he was telling me that schools are actually closing at Friday, I think so.
Oh, well, there you go. Looks like they changed.
Yeah, they should, to be honest, in my opinion at least. But as I said,
Yep.
I'm really no expert
Neither one
at
of us is
all.
an epidemiologist, so who
Yeah,
knows,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, if you have other things to plug, feel
No
free.
plugs. No plugs left. I plugged it all.
Cool, cool. Then, yeah, man. Thanks again for coming on, and yeah, stay safe.
Awesome. You too. Thank you for having me on.
Bye.
Bye bye.